6:30. Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, are you ready?
Yeah, you guys should go ahead.
Okay. All right, it's 6:30, so we'll get started. Welcome everybody to the Rose Park Community Council for the April meeting. We thank you very much for being here. This meeting is going to be focused on neighborhood development. We've got some people coming from planning to talk about our small area plan in Rose Park and the Northwest plan as well. That'll be later in the agenda. First, we have our usual monthly business items to hear from. So, looks like there's one from Fire here.
Yeah, I apologize. I just came from a meeting, so I don't have anything formally prepared for you. So if you have any questions, that'll be great.
What's that? Oh, we got to do the pledge. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Stand up, everybody. Do the pledge of allegiance. I'm not trying to project my allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. What was your name, sir?
Chief Goodwin?
Chief Goodwin. That's
Yeah, I was supposed to be 7-0, and they just got hit on a call. So
okay. Well, thanks for being here. Any questions for Chief Goodwin about fire issues before we move on? Okay. Well, thanks for being here, Chief. We've also got, as always,
I am the department's representative to the community council districts and District 1. I have a couple things we'll hit over real quick. We have the March summary. We've been going in the right direction. Everything's been going fairly well. I'll give you, for example, the Part 1 crimes and serious offenses. March of 15, we were at 152. This year we're at 96. That's very good. 15 or 363. We had so the week of March 8th, last year, total about 45. The only thing that was largely we had last week and as always, high. They have never the lack of vehicles that have first models for control officers. So, question?
Next
yeah.
Get rid of it has so much of the cover. So it's one thing other than just there's only enough to go. You don't have the opportunity to be as proactive as like. It's a long time. A lot of a lot of fast, a lot of probably as always, gone through my phone tonight.
So as you can tell, we're a fairly busy station. We're not the busiest station, but we're fairly busy, and we see that total this year we've been on 884 responses. So it adds up pretty quick. For the department total, we've seen 2,062 medical calls and 496 fire calls. So staying busy, which unfortunate for the public, but we tend to like to help. So if something bad goes wrong, we want to be there to help. So with that in mind, our fire chief, Brian Dale, has a message for you. You know, this time of year we get a lot of runoff. We start to see the streams in the canyon flow, some swift water buildup, and also here in the surplus canals in the Jordan River that comes right through these neighborhoods. We want to make people aware that swift water really is a hazard for our citizens. And so Chief Dale wants us to be cautious around the water and respect it for what it is. Particularly as the water rescue team, I hear people say, oh, the Jordan River, nothing. It moves so slow, there's no problem there, it's not a hazard. Well, in all reality, even water moving, which appears to be slow, has a lot of force behind it. And so it says here in his article, talks about how even 1 foot of water moving over something could move a car or a boulder, and we see a lot of stuff get moved pretty easily by what seems to be slow water or slow moving water. So we want you to be aware of that. Some of his tips for you is if someone does get in the water and is experiencing a problem, call 911 as fast as you can. Keep your eyes on the person. Try to throw something to them if you can. Remember that getting in the water yourself is the last resort. That's even for rescuers, that can be dangerous. We think it's slow water, but there's a lot of force behind it, and particularly the Jordan River, there's lots of submerged obstacles and things that you could be becoming trapped on. So be aware of that. If you call 911 to get rescuers coming to the scene, make sure that you have someone there to meet the rescuers to tell us where they were last seen, what their location was. And then also a lot of people will think, oh, I can get a watercraft in or a boat or some other things, some other means to help them. And so it says, don't place watercraft in the water. This may hinder rescuers and place you at risk. So the underlying message is to respect the water for what it is and to be safe around it and be aware that it can be enjoyable, but it can also be a hazard. And if you have the respect for it, then chances are you won't have the problem in the first place. So that's just a quick little snippet of what's going on in the department now. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask as far as what's going on or anything like that? Yes, sir.
X amount of fire calls that you responded to?
I don't have the breakdown for Station 7. Salt Lake City, the whole department, all 14 stations, is 496 fire incidents. Now, that may not be a full-blown working fire, but it's at least a fire-related response.
And then,
go ahead.
More specifically, it's like, do you have any, like, what was the cause of the fires? Or
it's been all over the place. We've seen a rash of different structure fires lately. You've probably seen on the news, but to say that it's one thing or the other, it's been different in each situation. And again, almost 500 fire responses. Not all of those were actual working structure fires, which is good. We don't really want those. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Is it illegal to put like a canoe in the Jordan River?
No, absolutely not. No, people canoe it all the time and raft, and as far as unless anyone has something different to say, it's there for us to recreate in. Just like any other lake or body of water, if you're following the rules and you're being safe, you're good to go. However, so many times we see people in canoes or rafts or boats, and they're not wearing a life vest. And so, please, if you go in the water, if you do canoe, if you do recreate, wear that life vest. That is more likely to save your life than any of us. We could throw 100 rescuers at something and not save someone's life, whereas one life vest really could save their life. So,
Yeah, the river's also not super clean too, so it's good to be on top of it rather than in it.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff goes in the water. If we go in as rescuers, we have dry suits that we put on, and we still wash off really good because it's not ideal. But yes, sir.
So I'm with the water department, and flood control is one of our responsibilities. There is a dam at the Gadsby Power Plant there, about 150 south.
Okay.
I think over the last 20 years, 3 people have died at that location, so you don't want to canoe it. That is like, don't go near that area. So we'll start above that, or if you do, get out, either fish it out someplace before that. As it cascades over, what happens, then it just, they call it
Yeah, it's a
effect.
washer effect. Yeah, it just
You
tumbles
can't
you.
get out.
Yep, that's the low head dams.
And I know 2 were actually experienced kayakkers with that stuff.
Stuff there. It really, it can surprise you how much force is behind there. And when you get in something like that, or if you get pinned up against a tree limb or a bridge, embankment, whatever, you're not really going to do a whole lot to get off of that. So, again, be aware of your surroundings and be safe there. So thank you for bringing that up too. Anything else? Well, appreciate being here. Just make sure you wave at us as we drive by, and it's your fire station, it's your fire engine, so realize that we're here to serve you, and we appreciate being able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we dipped into neighbor to neighbor a little bit. We'll hold the rest of that for the end, so if you have something you want to contribute, just stay till the end. We'll give you some time. But now we have our featured presenter here today from Salt Lake City Planning, Mr. Michael Malloy. He's going to tell us about what his department.
So, as you mentioned, my name is Michael Malloy. I am a senior planner with the Salt Lake City Planning Division. I've been with the city about 9 years, and I've worked for a few other communities in the Wasatch Front. Worked for Woods Cross, Midvale, Taylorsville. I did a brief stint in Twilla as their community development director about 15 years or so ago. And I love working for Salt Lake City. This has been a very good community to work for and to work with. It's been a little while since I've been here with the Rose Park Community Council, and I don't think I recognize a single face here. It's a lot of fresh participants, so that's great. So primarily what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about, as was mentioned, what the Planning Division does relative to master plans and how do we implement those master plans. Kind of what your role is, typically, as citizens, and maybe a little bit about what the role of the Planning Commission and the City Council is in the process. And just kind of talk about what are some of the basic tools and terminology that we use when we're talking about planning and development in a city. When I received an email asking or inviting someone from the Planning Division to come, I was told that you were interested in having some conversations relative to your master plans, and you specifically referred to the Rose Park Small Area Master Plan. Great, you know about it. That's excellent. This is a master plan that's available on the city's website. I do have one printed copy. If somebody would like to have this printed copy, I could leave it with you tonight. But generally, we try to distribute these electronically. It seems like most people want them that way these days, so they can search keywords or references within the master plan document. So again, that's available on the website. And then there's also this larger formatted plan, which this is a little bit unique. So the Northwest Community Master Plan. It's unique in that this is actually combined with another master plan in the city. It's the Jordan River Airport Master Plan. Most times when you see these printed documents in City Hall or even online, it's one plan per document. And I wasn't around when it was decided to be printed this way. My guess is that both plans were maybe a little bit smaller, and they're next to each other and they're near each other. So maybe there was just simply a choice of printing them together. But I make a point of that just because there is some information in this planning document that is not specific to Rose Park. It's obviously more for what's happening further north in the city. So both of these plans are in effect right now in your community. This is again, kind of the larger area master plan, what we call a community master plan. And then this is, takes a closer look at some specific neighborhoods or areas within Rose Park. And this approach is not uncommon. Within Salt Lake City, we have a number of community master plans, and then also these small area plans. Sometimes they even get down to what we call a block plan. Well, they even do a planning document specifically for a block. So, again, those are available on the city website. But first of all, let's just talk about what a master plan even is. Anybody want to take a stab at describing what a master plan is? And no takers on that?
That's why we invited you.
Okay. So a master plan is really a reflection of your vision. And it really should be a vision from the community, from residents of the community. It doesn't need to be my vision. It doesn't need to be the mayor's vision or the city council necessarily. It really should be your vision. Now, when we think about a master plan, we typically think that this is a vision of where we're going in the future. And we typically say, imagine where you want to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And the main reason why we do that when we do master planning is if you're planning for the next 5 years or 10 years, sometimes we limit ourselves. We think, well, how much change can we really affect in 5 years? We certainly need those short-term goals, and master plans do that. They will illustrate short and medium and long-range goals. But we still want to make sure we're heading in this, long-term direction. So master plans think about where do we want to be 20 and 30 years from now. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that's on the ground right now we envision changing. A lot of our communities we envision 30 years from now will be the same. A lot of our neighborhoods will still be kind of the same neighborhoods. We're probably not expecting to see that kind of change. In fact, these days in Salt Lake City, when we're doing master planning, we really focus more on areas of change. In the past, when we've done master plan updates, we would look at the whole neighborhood comprehensively and basically write a new master plan to address everything in that community. We still do that to a degree, but we really tend to focus on areas that we want to see change in the neighborhood, that you want to see change. For example, the 10th North, 9th West intersection, which we're going to be doing the James Walk tomorrow, right?
Yep, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it is a policy document that is adopted by the City Council. And the way we do that is at first there's a lot of input from the community, whether it's input that is coordinated by city staff, or oftentimes these master plans are very labor intensive, and the city may hire a consultant to do the work, and they'll meet with communities and work together, usually over a period of a year or two at least, to do a master plan. Now, in the case of Rose Park, we obviously have a master plan, so if there was ever a desire to update the existing plan, we wouldn't have to start all over. We can certainly look at what we've got and figure out what's working. And the city right now hasn't been in the habit of hiring consultants on these master plan projects. Any of you familiar with the West Salt Lake master plan that was adopted about a year ago by the City Council? I'll leave a copy of this as well. It is also on the city's website. One of the first things you'll notice is that we've gone away from this larger tabloid format. Simply again because most people want these plans electronically, and so we do format it so it does print nicely, but we're not doing these oversized versions any longer. But again, the planning division did this all in-house. This was all done without hiring any outside consultants and working very closely with the West Salt Lake community councils and residents. So again, this is a policy document, it's a vision document. It does not regulate. It is different from the zoning ordinance of the city. And I brought a copy of our zoning code. This is the zoning regulations for all of Salt Lake City, not just Rose Park. But this is basically what are the rules of the game. Everything that is in here was adopted by various city councils over the decades. Salt Lake City did a massive code update, zoning ordinance update in 1995. So this is basically the 1995 code with a slew of amendments that have been adopted over the years. I'm sure as you receive agenda items here for Rose Park, from time to time you see requests to amend the zoning code, either the map or the text of the zoning ordinance. And so we're constantly amending these, whether it's initiated by the city itself, or they can also be initiated by residents, or by a property owner or a developer. So really anybody can file a petition to change the development regulations. There is a fairly lengthy process to do that, and unless the zoning amendment is initiated by the city, like the city council, there's usually a fee that is based on how much acreage is involved in the zoning amendment. If it's a map amendment, if it's a text amendment, it's just a flat fee, but it is several $100s. And so it is enough to discourage typically someone on their own to file a zoning amendment. Usually what happens is if somebody wants to do a zoning amendment that's initiated by the residents of a community, they'll either pull together support and kind of split the fee amongst themselves, which is actually fairly rare. Typically what happens is if a community really wants to change the zoning ordinance or zoning map, you would work with your city council representative and see if you can't convince the city council to initiate a change. And if the city council initiates, then of course there's no fee, which kind of removes that barrier. So again, policy document, where are we going in the future, and regulatory. This is actually the rules of the game. So the role of the planning division staff is to, when it comes to a master plan, we will either initiate the research to start to write a new master plan, or in the case of your community, probably to amend it. There's probably something specific that you would like to see happen in a part of your neighborhood. And the planning division staff would work with your community and community council to craft that language and put together what are the amendments that you would like to see happen. There would be a series of open house meetings and eventually public hearings with the city. And then the city council has to be the final kind of legislative body or the authority to approve any master plan amendments in the city. By state law, the city council can't take any actions to change a master plan without the planning commission offering a recommendation. So your city council representatives, of course, are elected. You vote them in and elect them to office. The planning commission are voluntary and they are appointed by the mayor with the consent of the city council. Any of you served on a planning commission before? Any of our board members? Okay. Planning commissioners do have term limitations. They can serve 2 4-year terms. Occasionally we'll have a commissioner who will fill the role of maybe somebody who's had to step down or leave their appointment early. Let's say they've been in their role for 2 years and they needed to, maybe they're moving from the community or something. And somebody can step in and fill the rest of that term and then be reappointed for 2 additional terms. So occasionally you might find somebody who's on the planning commission who's been there for more than 4 years or 8 years. But the city does practice term limitations with our planning commission. Our planning commissioners are, we work hard to have commissioners representing every council district throughout the city. but we do have a few at-large appointments. And occasionally we really struggle, which has surprised me. In a city that is 185,000 people, we occasionally have a hard time filling our planning commission positions. So if that's something that you're ever interested in, you can go to the city's website and find out some more about how to volunteer to serve on a planning commission. We may not have a vacancy now, but certainly there will be over time. There'll be an opportunity to serve if that's something you'd like to do. So the planning commission, yes?
Yeah, no, I don't want to get ahead of you if you're going to answer
No, go right
this,
ahead.
But I was just curious, you said that these master plans are sort of our vision
Yes.
of our community. So how does that work? Like, how do we submit ideas? Is that on the website, or do we put things to a vote, or how do we come together to share our vision?
Well, certainly a forum like this would be terrific. What I was going to recommend is that if there's a real concerted support for amending either of these two documents, the Community Master Plan or the Small Area Plan, is to craft up kind of a resolution, or what are your objectives? You may not have all the solutions, but you may have an idea, a specific idea of what you want to see change. So look very carefully at these existing policy documents and start to identify what those changes are. And then again, once you can basically in a concise format communicate that as a neighborhood, as a body, I would encourage you to work with your city council representative to petition that they initiate some type of an amendment. Now, I didn't explain maybe why that's important, and I'll follow up with your question on. Anytime somebody wants to change the zoning ordinance, which again is the rules for development, we check to see if it's consistent with these policy documents. So that's why these are really important. I usually tell people that changing the zoning code is like getting your tooth pulled. It should be hard, in my opinion. It shouldn't be just something that's willy-nilly. Anybody walks in and says, well, I want to change the zoning code for my property or my neighbor's property. And it's just, really easy. You could just do that. There's a lot of thought that goes into the zoning ordinance, and it should be expressing what's in this vision. So if somebody wants to change the zoning ordinance and it's not consistent with the vision document, we'll tell someone, no, we're not going to support that. That's contrary to what we've said where we're going. So if they say, well, I want to change both. I want to change this and the zoning code. I usually tell people that's like giving up your first child. It should be, again, really hard, because a lot of people spend a lot of time saying, this is our vision. And then someone comes along and says, well, your vision's wrong. Or you got it wrong. Now, maybe there's some good reasons for that. Maybe the vision's outdated. Just because we've said our vision is 30 years in the future, this particular plan was adopted in 2001. The Northwest plan was adopted in 1990. So these plans are, this one is 6 years old.
So we should have achieved it, right?
Yeah, but it's definitely time to be thinking about making a change here. Now, there are a few other community master plans that are older than this. The Avenues Community Master Plan is actually older. But I think that you're probably coming up on a priority list, I would think, for this document. So that's why these documents are so important, because anytime somebody says, I want to change the development rules for my property, we're going to look at this to see if it's consistent. Because hopefully this zoning code is the implementation tool for this. That's how we go from having a vision to actually implementing it. When somebody wants to come and do a development, we want to make sure it's consistent with this.
So
Yes.
two small questions, just because I've never looked at this before. Is this like down to nitty-gritty details? This is like what we envision in terms of like development with apartments, or a new coffee shop, or a new
Yep.
restaurant, right? Is
It
it
can
all
be.
these things?
As I mentioned, that some plans get down to even block level. And it can be very specific. What you'll find typically is these vision documents are more, this is what we want. A lot of times the zoning code is written to say, this is what we don't want. And unfortunately, that's one of the bad things about our older zoning codes. In some parts of the city, we are now doing what's called form-based zoning. You have a little bit of that in the along the North Temple Tracks line, the transit station area overlay, which is a type of zoning ordinance that's a little more nimble and really is more specific about what you want in the community rather than what you don't want. Traditional zoning in the past has been about zoning out things that are kind of bad neighbors. You know, it's the classic, I don't want to live next to a factory. The factory should be somewhere else, not in the middle of the neighborhood. That's where zoning came from. It was the idea of let's separate incompatible land uses. But in the process, it's really difficult to use that type of a tool to then turn around and say, well, I want something specific to happen here. I'm not necessarily wanting to prohibit something, I actually want to encourage something. And some of the newer zoning tools like form-based codes actually do that. They're much better at saying, I want this type of development to happen in this neighborhood node.
Yeah.
Like again about 9th West and 10th North.
The nice thing about the form-based stuff too is there's like pictures and stuff as well.
Yeah.
It isn't just like, oh, this is to 1,000 square feet and the setback needs to be this. You can actually see pictures of how things are supposed to look and be oriented to the street. So
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you have another question?
I was
Right
just
ahead.
wondering, you said that this is available on a website. I
Yeah.
was wondering what website and where specifically.
So
you can
the
find it.
city's website is slcgov.com.
Mhm.
And if you just search for master plans, you'll find all of the master plans are all in one
Google
section.
search Rose Park small area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
On our
next,
Facebook page.
master plans are actually, there are some elements of the master plan that are required by the state. So the state essentially says, cities, if you're going to have zoning and you're going to have these master plans, you need to address housing. That's one of the things that they require. So there are some other elements that are required. So your community master plan has a section that talks about housing, talks about businesses, commercial areas in the community, talks about transportation, what's the transit network like in the community. Also identifies problems, things that you'll want to see change or be improved upon. It'll also set policies and goals. As I mentioned, it'll have statements about kind of like short-term, medium, and long-range objectives. The small area plans are more specific. Like there is specific language in here that talks about 10th North and 9th West, talking about that we would like to have more shopping and community services, even like a neighborhood grocery, some things like that. So the master plan certainly has some specific information for that. So as a planner, my job is to work with the community to make sure that every time we have a development project that comes into the city is following both the master plan and the zoning code. If somebody wants to change that, we would work with that individual or the community council to hold a series of public outreach meetings and public hearings, as I mentioned earlier. Eventually, the planning commission would make a recommendation that's forwarded to the city council, and then the city council has the final determination and make the final decision. Now, both of those bodies, the planning commission and the city council, can recommend changes. So let's say that you guys all petition the city to make some change to the master plan. And then we work together and come up with an amendment to that. But maybe there's some issues we hadn't thought of. Maybe there's some larger concerns, maybe relative to a neighboring community council that we didn't adequately address. Or maybe we didn't include enough information on affordable housing or something like that. So it's possible through that public hearing process that things may be tweaked and changed over time. But eventually it would be adopted by the city council. There have been few plans that I've seen get stalled in this city, where there just wasn't consensus between the community and the planning commission and the city council. You've seen that happen with the Northwest Quadrant master plan. We've had 2 significant runs at that, or 3 actually, if we go over the last 10 years. And we still haven't adopted a plan, although I think we're getting close, but it's not quite there yet.
If we had one adopted, then we wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So, I think for me, one of the main things I really wanted to emphasize is the master plan is the vision, and they are really important. The zoning ordinance is the tool to implement this vision. And Salt Lake City does a really good job of following these master plans. At least in my division, my department, what we do in working with the Planning Commission. I think, I don't know if I dare say this, I think we probably could do a little better job of when we create our budget as a city, when we're trying to decide where to spend money. Do we look at the master plans and make sure that we're accomplishing these? Maybe we are, but it seems like every city I've worked for, that's always been really difficult. When you're doing your capital improvement programs, you as a community, when you come up with your vision, you're hoping that when the city is spending their money, your money, through tax dollars, that they're implementing the vision that you've worked so hard to get adopted. So, and Salt Lake City's, that's a challenge of all communities that I've worked for. But I've seen communities who will spend thousands of dollars creating these master plans, and then once they're all done, pat themselves on the back, and they put it on the shelf, and it really doesn't mean anything. And that is not true here in this city. I've had a number of times when I've worked on a project, reviewing it, and I've gone to the developer and said, look, right here in the master plan, you're not consistent. You're not doing the things that have been expressed by the community, and it's had an impact. So this is an area that you as a community can really make a difference. And then once we've got this crafted, the next step is to make sure that the zoning ordinance is consistent with your vision. So that when that developer, that new property owner comes to town and wants to do something different, you've already established the rules of the game that will guide them and bring about the change that you want.
So what's the timeline for something like that? You make
So,
it sound like you get here, then maybe you can get there. Or maybe
you know,
it's on yourself.
planning, and I appreciate this. As a planner, I'm not afraid to think about changes over years, over decades. Because really, that's how you see change. When I worked for Taylorsville, they had an unfortunate opinion that, hey, we're all built out, we're all developed. We really don't need planning because we're not really changing that much. We don't really see changes happening in our neighborhood. But I worked there for 7 years, and in that 7 years, I probably saw hundreds of small and some larger decisions that were made, development projects that came in. And you look back on that 7 or 10 years of work, there's been actually a lot of change that's happened in the neighborhood. You do need to take that long vision and then recognize that all of the little decisions that are made every day in City Hall are little steps towards implementing your vision. And when you look back on it, it really does add up. So, but you do have to have the patience and the determination to make those changes. Now, a master plan amendment will usually take about a year or maybe a little longer. A whole new master plan is going to take longer. It's probably more like a 2 to 3 year process, depending on if it's all done by staff, if it's done in-house, or occasionally the city has hired a consultant. Like I said, over the last several years, I can't remember, I think the TSA project on North Temple, we hired a consultant for that. But the East Bench master plan is being updated right now. That's all being done in staff. The West Side master plan was all done by staff. Plan Salt Lake, that was a citywide master plan, was all done in-house. So that seems to be the trend that we're doing right now. Is there sometimes is a concern that when we hire consultants, although they have expertise, and they have the time and the ability, sometimes they're not as good at listening to us and implementing, the vision. Yes?
Yeah, so how often when you do these master plans do you actually include members of the particular communities that you're planning as part of the commission that's planning them?
All the time. In fact, I didn't mention it, but typically when you're doing a master plan, specifically a community master plan, you'll form like an advisory committee even before the planning commission. And that is a group of constituents that have they're like stakeholders. They have some skin in the game, so to speak. And that can be businesses, residents, community board, council members. So absolutely, there's a lot of neighborhood, community involvement anytime you're doing a master plan. The amendments tend to be more narrow. I'm processing a master plan amendment for a single parcel on South Temple, for example, right now. A property owner has purchased a vacant parcel. It has never been developed. He's claiming that the zoning isn't appropriate for the parcel. And in order to change the zone, again, we have to change the master plan because what he wanted to do was not consistent with the master plan. And I told him he was really fighting an uphill battle. Because again, I'm sending that signal. These should be really hard to change. But he went to the planning commission last week and was able to get a positive recommendation. Now, it doesn't mean that the city council is going to approve it. That's very often what the planning commission recommends. The city council will kind of apply their own thinking, and they'll say, thank you, we like that, but we want to make maybe a small change here. Or sometimes they'll say, thank you, but we're going to go in a different direction. And that doesn't happen very often. But again, like in the case of the Northwest Quadrant Master Plan, we did make a recommendation several years ago on that, and the council never could come to an agreement to adopt it. So it does happen occasionally. Yes?
How many volunteer commissioners are there? And you said they're appointed?
They are, yeah.
Are they?
Our planning commission, I know there is a maximum, and I apologize, I don't know what that number is. I want to say it's like 12. So we have 7 city council districts. So we do have a few that are at large. But
So who appoints them?
so the mayor
Okay,
will
so
make
that's
the
my
appointment, and then the city council will
That's my
say,
question. She
yeah.
unappointed a bunch of people. Did she unappoint any of the commissioners?
That is, those are not volunteer individuals. The people that the mayor basically unappointed, that was the term you used, those were department heads.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was not-
those were employees of the city that served at the will of the mayor. Yeah.
Are these appointed volunteer positions?
Yes.
Are these ones that kind of anyone can apply for to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. To be honest, we do look for people who maybe have some expertise or some interest already, but you don't have to be an architect or an engineer or you don't have to have a professional background where you're engaged in the development community. We've had people from a variety of backgrounds, but you certainly want somebody who at least understands kind of how it works a little bit. There is some training that happens when a new commissioner is appointed. But somebody who's going to take their role seriously, who's going to participate, who will come to the meetings, who has time to be able to participate. I think another element is that we really work hard to try and have diversity, that we have varying viewpoints, and that's one of the reasons why we try to have at least one person from each council district, city council district, to try and have diversity. Yes?
I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong here. So you get the plan, and that's kind of the vision for the future, and then obviously the zoning book is the kind of the process by which we implement the plan.
Right.
But as far as actually like achieving development that's consistent with the plan, it sounds like that all comes kind of from developers, from the ground up, in other words.
It does, unless you can get the city to spend their dollars on programs that are consistent with your plan. For example, you've got a lot of great streetlights that we've had installed here not too long ago, these decorative streetlights. That would be an example of some type of capital improvement that the city made that probably worked in concert with some community,
Yeah.
vision.
We've got a couple things like that to work on. So let's say that in the plan, there's, something we like you mentioned, the 9th West, 10th North area. And I think we looked at this Rose Park Small Area Plan and thought, oh, that's kind of what we want there. It's not exactly what we're seeing there.
It's not happening.
What would you recommend we do to encourage things to happen that would be consistent with the plan?
Yeah, one of the challenges that we have, Salt Lake City, and I don't work for the economic development side of the city, right? There is an economic development division. Mayor Skupski actually wants to elevate that and make that position to be a whole department unto themselves. That's one of the things she's working on right now, which I think is great. I think that we try and give our economic development team in the city some more teeth, some more support. But traditionally, since I've been on staff over the last 9 years, it seems like Salt Lake City says, you know what, we have a good community, we have a pretty healthy economy, we're not going to throw a lot of dollars at people to come and do stuff. Like, some other communities will do incentives, right? They'll do a variety of incentive programs to try and woo people to come to our community and build things. I think Salt Lake City's had an attitude of, we're pretty good on our own, we don't need to spend a lot of tax dollars trying to entice people to do things. Now, the RDA, the Redevelopment Agency, is a little bit different, right? I don't think there is an RDA district in your community council,
there's
right?
not.
Yeah.
Is that something that the city has been talking about with you guys?
I'd like to.
You'd like to, okay. So when an RDA district is established, which again is not my forte, that's a different department of the city. But when that is established, there are some additional economic development tools that the city will then use to try and encourage development that you actually want. For example, the 9th South track station is an RDA district that is winding down, and if any gone down recently, at that track station, it's an RDA district, and so the city's trying to certain things happen before the RDA district expires. A lot on the books that's happening in the neighborhood over the next probably 2 to 3 years.
How large are those districts?
Usually they're little blocks, yeah. The city council is our city council kind of two hats, city council, but then they're also RDA board. I know they're looking at getting some new districts right now. State Street is one of them. Yeah. I don't know about I heard there were 2 that they were raised. Yeah, the
It's
9
in
line.
Glendale, that was recently,
Yeah.
and it was an RDA. And Councilmember Rogers did put 10th North, 9th West
Oh.
up, and it didn't pass the initial voting. So it's
I was
up
not
for,
aware of that.
yeah.
Yes. Anyway, but so the area, is there always like a stipulation that there be affordable housing when you develop that area?
RDA is not that I work for.
Getting away from.
Be a great
Okay.
I could follow up on that, but
Okay.
I don't think there's an inherent housing type of housing in RDA district.
Still on the RDA thing. If we community wanted to RDA help or identify a district, would it help to point to the master plan and say, look, like I said, there's a disparity between happening, that's why we need an RDA to kind of achieve the plan, as we can use the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the other thing, and I read comments that are in this particularly about that. And I'm wondering if maybe there should be some reconsideration of that corner. That the zoning for one of the reasons why you're not seeing change is not the right zone to try and achieve the plan. Maybe if there was something incentive in the zone that would encourage the existing property owners to try to redevelop themselves, or maybe then the property becomes more valuable so that they can entice our somebody to buy it. Yeah, it's very possible zoning is not right. Plan's good, but the zoning is bad.
Yeah,
Zoning is really generic.
we don't have any form-based stuff in our, that could be something that can help.
Yeah.
And that all goes through city council. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Will you be joining us on a suggestion about how we can fix
Becoming a what? Any other questions? So am I, you're not satisfied with this, it's not a problem.
Yeah, no, I think most people probably that existed in our neighborhood. So
Yeah.
was getting, frankly, stumbled upon and looked at and liked in the small area plan. Probably not as for the Northwest, just noticed. But so we're kind of just taking things right now.
Right.
But that intersection
It was identified. It was identified as really great potential, but in the 16 years that plan has been
Yeah.
around, 15
That you might want to consider is you on that corner, if you could get, make sure you have the right quality, maybe that would have, I don't know, or make you, or you have some places, something that would be better.
Margaret, what is there specific on that?
Yes, it's a general, yeah, jail, office, various services,
3 different zones I saw on where you're at. It's just, they're all different. On the east side, but then north side of north, there's like it's
maybe some just to illustrate what is happening right there on the.
and you can go to the city's website and they have it. Just, you can search on slcgov.com and a map. Yes.
I've got you other churches or commitment to street trees.
Sweet new monument signs.
Yeah, so things that can do to improve the desirability of that kind of raises the value of redevelopment because somebody really wants to relook at what's happening in the city. Really pushed UTA hard to place. We changed the zoning, we upzoned the area, and we put it into zone that form-based code. As we tried to do form-based code out people interested, and then the RDA was able to use their tools to start moving some projects. It's really great.
This form-based code?
So we're not about have use restrictions, generally it prohibited. We say, but we want it to have this very heavily. Especially anytime anybody we look at this guide. This should be reflected. But if you like the vision, look at zoning as make sure the right. If it's not, maybe we should try to do the zoning. And then I'll work with make small minimal changes. They will make a difference. And I'll leave these copies here if anybody wants these.
question with the whole zoning thing? If you've got
Yeah.
a property that's already currently there, you may not want, what happens to that? If the zoning, we're able to pass a zoning change,
So
what happens?
you've heard the term grandfathered,
Okay.
right? So somebody maybe is no longer, maybe their use is not with the zone. The inn is not complying, non-conforming use under the current zoning code.
So how's it there?
Because when you change zones, it doesn't, somebody has a right to keep what they have, essentially. But if they want to redevelop, then they have to develop under the new ordinances. They have to follow the new code. Yeah.
In the event that the building burned to the ground, happened on Main Street.
Yeah.
that burn to the ground, they cannot then build back.
They can't.
So if it's
The ordinance allows act of God. You can build you can model. There's even a little room for expansion, but it's really tight. What usually happens over time, you know, if the economic forces are moving in a different direction, usually over time, it just becomes a higher and more economic use to use, right? It's more valuable to do something different with the property.
so even with that, can they sell? Would they be able to sell to another person
Yeah,
that's
it's
right
fully
off
transferable.
that exact same
Yes.
thing? They couldn't sell to someone that they parcel or
They could either maintain their non-conforming use, they have to allow them. I don't want to take too much of your time.
That was excellent.
I'll leave you if anybody wants those.
You guys have heard references to the law you've seen online or on Facebook.
The program, it's a program. BJ goes for Jane Jacobs. She was a journalist in the 1960s, were called, and lots of developers on planning. Another great that work in the neighborhood key terms. A couple of just nuances from her book. She coined the phrase called the ballet of the sidewalk. Good sidewalks, good streets, good neighborhoods have this interplay of people biking, seniors. A mix of density makes a good map. All people that have eyes on the street. Director, he got her and drive helping organizations like learn about these. So here months ago, and we worked with the community council to find ways to help your to celebrate it. Love where you are, love where you work, and also to focus on areas that you can improve and bring key stakeholders who can make those decisions. So you reached out tomorrow. They reached out to the Salt Lake City Planning, and they're going to be there. The Salt Lake City Police Department's going to be there in the walk. All that I encourage them to do. Whole thing that you have hosting is this international family. Just know her well, what she championed, and you're that. This year, it's her anniversary of years this reason why this is really you're going to do something that you're going to focus on. And I'm like you're on came in class. How can I? And they work because we've got lots of other walks going on in the country as well. I'll be about anybody walk could be. He also teaches a class and walk things up down about the book. We're going to do it. And the book is so. Those aren't photos, photographers. So I will give those.
Saying that.
Me, more for you guys and to do 6 1 hour walk. So question streets internet you can walk so that help. Go to the website and see city with 10 down and 2 on the 2nd, 3rd. We many parks that fit, and so that is all. afternoon. So we've got lots of really cool walks since we're based here in Salt Lake City. We've really tried to do that. That's
great. Just reiterate on Metro Unicode. They didn't make it tonight, but they've so the 10th, so just in that corner, obviously in Central Unicode. Well, Salt Lake City Police joining us from EA. We need to see her to talk about them tonight. They'll be there. Potentially as well, and we kind of know the last different city service providers. So it's a chat, formal setting, and also to meet the people who work for you and who can help us achieve change in the neighborhood if that's what we want. And James Rogers, I believe, will also be there, so he's feeling better. That's our city council. So hope y'all can make it. And that is our agenda. Any neighbor to neighbor. I was saying it. I was in the process of saying it. So does anybody?
I just wanted to remind everybody that the Salt Lake County Democrat Convention is on Saturday at Cypress High School. Start going. Carpool, let me know. Republicans is on the 16th, so it's 2 Saturdays from now, and that will be at Cottonwood High. Republicans.
A couple of things. I walk to the one. So we're using cars so much. 6 to 7, we'll have questions too. Earlier, he's been really great. There's a lot of information about what's going on at Salt City, and he's been hitting them hard. It's been really amazing. That was one of our first kind of charges for him. A lot of great. I really encourage you to attend or neighbors. Saturday, April 23rd, we have our cleanup on 6th North from 9 to 11. Mayor Biskupski has, so she'll be there helping everybody out, pick up trash. Saturday, 23rd, from 9 to 11. I've noticed, I think a lot more trash accumulates through this than does during the. There's a lot, so we need all of that. And then
that's the same day as some caucuses, but it'll be over by a week. Make it convention. Sorry, not caucuses. Right.
And then of course we have elections coming up in May, the first Wednesday in May. So there are seats available. If you're interested, let one know. Do your commitment. We can let us know now. You can nominate yourself the day of. We will tally that night and find our next board members for the next 2 years. So I encourage all to do a lot. The commitment is 2 years, but monthly you're looking at about 5 to 10 hours a month. Is what we do. We have these monthly meetings outside of July and August, then we have interim meetings, and then we obviously host various events throughout the year where we need help with that. And we want to kind of do new things too. So there's new ideas and perspectives in this room. So you can bring that to the community council. It's a great place to facilitate change in the community. And then of course there's one other thing happening in May. What was it? That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Saturday, May 21st is a community festival, 10 to 4. It'll be great. It'll be awesome. Please tell everybody about it. I think that's it for me.
Anybody else? There's one thing I want to mention on the walk tomorrow. I didn't mention this. I said code enforcement, health inspector, and some kind of hammer type agencies, but we also have a service provider there that helps people who may have homes that need updating or aren't up to code or whatever, who can actually help provide that to those people. So if you have somebody who lives, especially in that area,